Pre-production survey. Before starting to create our own short comedy film, I created a survey that was available for the general public to answer, so that we could narrow down what conventions we wanted to base our film around, and so that it would fit to our target audience and they would enjoy it. What type of audience feedback did I get? To gather audience feedback from our first draft of our short film, I created a feedback questionnaire. I sent the film and ancillary tasks to members of the public that fit into our target audience, and then asked them each questions once they had watched it. I used this method so that people could watch the film on their own without the pressure of the filmmakers watching them or seeing other people's reactions and feeling like they have to feel the same about our film. Also, this method would mean that people would not be swayed by other people's answers as they are sent privately. Post-production audience feedback. How I gathered the feedback. The first way that I gathered my feedback was through direct text messages to people that I know. Next, I went onto Twitter and tweeted a thread of poll tweets about our short film to get a range of answers from people around the world and different ages. How useful was the feedback? The feedback that I got was very useful as it was clear what we needed to change to improve our short film for our audience and target market. When multiple people critiqued on the same part of the film, we can see that the majority, if not all of our audience would feel the same. What did it tell me? Overall, my feedback told me that our target audience found it funny. However, there were parts of the film that people didn't understand. For example, the ending of the film. The feedback told me that the cast were good and if we tidied up the storyline and the script, then it would work well. Feedback from social media on our first draft. The feedback that I got from asking questions on Twitter was a simple way to show what the majority of people thought. Most people felt as though all the characters in the film were necessary. Most people thought that our comedy short film followed the conventions of a short film in this genre. Most people who watched the short film online were 16 to 19-year-olds, which is the biggest portion of people from our target audience. Most people did find our short film funny, and everyone that watched it felt it was easy to follow and made sense. Everyone that watched our short film, First Draft, said that they would watch another comedy film that was created by Up to Date Films. The first person that we got audience feedback from was Abby Smith. She's 18, a female, and lives in London. She found our short film funny, especially parts when the girls came into the house and when it was awkward, and the bit with the Alexa. She found that our storyline was easy to follow and it made sense. The only part she didn't understand was when the boys left because it was their party. She said that she would definitely watch another film by Up to Date Films. She felt as though all the characters were necessary, as if we had any less characters then it wouldn't fit the storyline because it's supposed to be a party. She felt that our film also followed the conventions of a short film, and if she would change anything it would be the ending when the boys leave, as she didn't feel like that would make sense. From this feedback, I learnt that the ending may not have been clear to everyone, so that could be something to change when we refilm. I also learnt that the amount of characters we had was good, as there weren't too many for the audience to get to know, but also at the same time there were enough to make the situation, which was a party, realistic. The next person we got our audience feedback from was Lauren Hugo. She's 18, a female, and from London as well. She felt that our short film was funny and that she really enjoyed the comedy in it. She felt that our short film was easy to follow and the narrative wasn't overly complicated or difficult to follow. She said that she would definitely watch another one of our films because she felt as though we represented teenagers quite well and we really understood our genre. She felt that all the characters were necessary, but however some of them were a bit stereotypical. But without them, she felt like it wouldn't feel realistic, as it was supposed to be a party. Lauren felt that our short film followed the conventions of a comedy short film, as all of our characters were very comical and we had a few jokes in the script, and the story was a calamity overall. Lauren said if she were to change anything about the film, she would encourage the boys to be a bit more lively and make the bathroom scene less uncomfortable. What I learned is that we need to use all of our characters to their full advantage and make sure that they are making a difference in the film. I also learned that the audience may want less of the awkward scenes, for example the bathroom scene, as after a while they're not funny and just make the audience feel awkward. The next person I got target audience feedback from was Tasha. She's 17, a female and from London. She found our short film funny, especially the end where the boys end up leaving before the girls. She felt that our story was easy to follow and she would definitely watch another one of our films as long as it had a new storyline. She felt as though all the characters were necessary, as if we didn't have them all, then it wouldn't have been able to create the party scene, but Jess and Alex were not as needed as they didn't have as many lines. Tasha felt that our short film followed the conventions of a comedy short film, as there wasn't too much going on, it was easy to follow and light-hearted and relatable for a teenager. Didn't feel like she would change anything in our short film. What I learnt from this feedback, I learnt that we need to make better use of all of our characters, as some of them were not used as well as they could have been, to create the atmosphere and tell the story. I also learnt that having two different perspectives, one from the girl's point of view and another from the boy's point of view, was a good way to start the story. The next person I asked for audience feedback was Emily Leonard. She's 20, female and from Nottingham. She found moments of the story were funny, but she wouldn't have said overall it was a really funny film. She felt our story was easy to follow the whole way through and it made sense. She would watch another comedy. Emily agreed that she would watch another one of our films as this story had a good storyline which made it interesting, so that would make her see another film by the group. She felt as though Alex didn't really have a role in the group and in the narrative, so he wasn't very necessary, but everyone else had a clear part to play in the story, but everyone else had a clear role and part in the story. She felt that our short film followed the conventions of a comedy short film, as it was a simple story but still had different things going on. She also found it interesting as it had elements of humour that came to a close at the end, which all wrapped up the film well. If she were to change anything about our film, she said that there's a scene where they are sitting around a table, all looking bored, and I think that it is slightly out of focus. Also at the end, when they are all running out of the house, it is very dark on the street and it is hard to see them running away. By making it slightly brighter, it would make it clearer what's going on. From this feedback, I learnt that we need to make sure that our camera is in focus and the lighting is important, as if the audience can't see what's going on, they may lose focus in the film. Our next target audience member was Amy Law. She's from London and is 17. She found our short film funny and easy to follow and would definitely watch another one of our comedy films as it was applicable to her age. She felt that all the characters were necessary, but maybe we could involve some of them slightly more, because she felt as though some of them were not used completely. She felt as though our short film followed the conventions of a comedy short film and she wouldn't change anything. From this feedback, I learned that we definitely need to make sure that all of our characters are involved in the film, as Amy brought this to our attention and is the third person to do so far, showing that it is noticeable to a lot of our target audience. The next person I asked was Olivia. She is in the lower age range of our target audience at 15 years old. She found our short film funny and said it was easy to follow the whole way through. Olivia said that she would definitely watch another film by up-to-date films, and she felt as though the amount of characters that we had was good, as there might not have been enough if we didn't have them all. Olivia felt our short film followed the conventions of a comedy short film, and it was clear that the jokes were not too forced. If she could change anything, Olivia said she would have more interactions between the boys and the girls after the scene in the bathroom. From this feedback, I learned that we could have more dialogue and interaction between the girls and the boys to make the story flow, and the two separate narratives of the boys and the girls' view come together. I also learned that our target audience were able to recognise our film as a comedy short film. The next person I asked for target audience research was Jasmine. She found our short film funny and easy to follow, although she didn't really understand what was going on when they were talking at the start, like the relationships between the girls and the boys. She said that she would definitely watch another one of our films and that all the characters were necessary, and also that our storyline worked well to follow the conventions of a short film. If she were to change anything, she would have the girls just to keep dancing and living it up at the end. From this feedback, I have learnt that the characters need to be more outgoing and fit into the situation that we had originally created them to be in. Even though it's supposed to be awkward at points, it needs to seem realistic. I asked Elizabeth Gray for feedback next. She found some parts of our short film funny, like the Alexa part and Maisie crying in the bath. She said that our short film was easy to follow, although she didn't understand at the end when the boys left their own house to go to another party. She said that she would watch another film by Up to Date Films. She felt as though not all of our characters were necessary, as Jess and Alex didn't have much speaking parts in the film, and therefore they didn't play a big role. She felt that our short film followed the conventions of a comedy short film, and if she'd change anything about our film, she would change the boys running out at the end. From this feedback, I have learned that the ending to our short film did not make sense, as it was Matt's house and the boys' party, yet they were the ones to leave. I also learned that Jess and Alex needed to have a bigger role in the story to make them fit in. The last person I asked for audience feedback from was John. He's 20, a male, and lives in Nottingham. He found our short film funny, however some parts with the boys he cringed at. He felt it was easy to follow but didn't understand why the boys had abandoned the girls after wanting to get with them previously in the story. John said he would watch another film by Up to Date Films and that all the characters seemed necessary. The group dynamics were clear and everyone had an equal weight in the narrative. John felt as though the It Party followed the conventions of a comedy short film as it kept his attention but the storyline was light. If he had the chance to change anything about our short film, he said he would add a bit of dialogue at the end when the girls realised the boys have run away. From this research, I learnt that we could do with a bit more dialogue and a more developed script. I also learnt that the ending of our film wasn't very clear, so we need to rethink that part of the story. How we improved our film with the help of the feedback. The first part of the film that we changed was the comedy in the script. When writing our first script, we thought of jokes that would make us laugh and that related to the actors that we had cast, as we felt they would be able to deliver this kind of comedy. However, we did not take into consideration how a large audience will be made up of people with different senses of humour and may find different things funny, especially if they do not know the cast, which a large portion of any audience will not. After reviewing our feedback, we decided to change the storyline to incorporate a different style of comedy that is more relatable to our entire audience and one that can be understood whether the audience knows the cast or not. The effect of changing the storyline like this means that they will understand the jokes and find it funnier, which is our aim, to make people laugh. The next thing we changed about our film was the characters' involvement. In our first draft, some of our characters, for example Jess and Alex, didn't have captivating or imaginative personalities and didn't talk much. When we rewrote our script, we paid intense attention to each character and what they would portray in the film. The effect of this change is that all of our characters had a part to play in the film, and the audience will find it easier to recognise what role they take on, i.e., a protagonist, the charmer, or the dog. The penultimate part of our film that we changed was the scene lighting. Due to the party setting of our film, it was inevitable that we would have some of the scenes shot in the dark. In our first draft, we had not thought carefully enough about the lighting that we were going to use in the final scene, and therefore it was too dark and you could not see the boys running down the road. Although we had noticed this in the post-production, it was brought back up in our audience feedback. When we refilmed, we made sure to have better lighting in the dark scenes, for example when the girls are walking down the road or when the girls are walking up to the house. The effect of this is that it means our audience can see what is happening at all times. It also means that the film is easier to follow and more enjoyable as the audience isn't left in the dark during any certain scene. The last part of the film that we changed was the ending. In our first draft of our film, the boys left the girls at their party and then ran off down the road in a badly lit street. After reviewing the audience feedback, we realised that along with the bad lighting, it was also a little strange that the boys left their own party with the girls that they liked abandoned in Matt's house. When we rewrote the script and refilmed, we changed the storyline that Matt's dad would come home early and kick the teenagers out of his house. This makes more sense and is clear to the audience what is happening in the story. It is also a more realistic ending to the film. Lastly, the cinematography and lighting improved in the refilming of the last scene, meaning that it was physically clearer to the audience as well.